Look, you've got massive dreams. You can vividly see yourself succeeding. You imagine the life you want so clearly that it feels almost entirely real. But then, when it's time to actually sit down and do the hard work, you just freeze. You wait. You tell yourself, hey, tomorrow's going to be different. But then tomorrow comes, and you do the exact same thing all over again. If you feel entirely stuck in place, full of incredible ideas but completely paralyzed when it comes to actually executing them, well, this explainer is for you.
It's a really paralyzing reality that so many of us face daily. You wake up with these massive goals and great intentions, but somehow you end up going to sleep with massive guilt. I want to speak directly to you right now and assure you of something absolutely critical. This is not about you being a bad person. This is definitely not a lack of intelligence, and it is certainly not a lack of talent. What you're experiencing is actually rooted deeply in psychology. It's about deeply ingrained brain patterns that have been built up over time. And the beautiful thing about patterns, well, if they can be built, they can definitely be unbuilt.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Section 1, the ambitious but stuck cycle. To truly change, we first have to understand the daily loop that's keeping you trapped. Look at this painfully familiar timeline. You wake up in the morning and you think, today is the day. You've got these great intentions to finally start that big project. But then, right around noon, you decide to check your phone. You're just going to scroll for a minute. And let's be honest, that is a complete lie we tell ourselves, right? Because those few minutes magically turn into an hour. By the afternoon, you feel unmotivated, kind of tired, so you tell yourself you'll just wait until you have a bit more energy. Then night falls, and there you are, lying in bed feeling incredibly guilty and disappointed in yourself. You promise yourself tomorrow will be different. Making those plans gives you this temporary, fleeting feeling of motivation, but it's totally an illusion, because the cycle of avoidance is just priming itself to repeat all over again.
Moving on to Section 2, your brain's comfort trap. Now, what's really interesting here is what's actually happening inside your brain. Notice this intense tug-of-war going on. On one side, you've got the achiever. This is the part of you that dreams big, sets ambitious goals, and desperately wants growth and success. But on the exact opposite side, you have the protector. And this part, it just wants safety, ease, and to avoid discomfort at all costs. When you think about working on your goals, your brain literally perceives that effort and uncertainty as a threat. It sees the very real possibility of failure. So it violently pushes you toward the protector side to avoid that perceived pain, offering you an easier, safer option, like playing a video game or mindlessly scrolling on your phone.
And this brings us to a really crucial definition. You are not experiencing laziness. You are experiencing survival mode. Your brain is prioritizing a short-term hit of dopamine to soothe the discomfort of effort. It actually thinks it's protecting you. It learns that avoiding your goals makes the immediate anxiety go away. But tragically, while it protects you from short-term discomfort, it is quietly stealing your long-term happiness. Every single time you choose comfort, you are teaching your brain that your dreams don't actually matter. Which brings us to Section 3. Perfectionism is just fear. So how do we justify being in this survival mode? We use mental traps, and this quote is an absolute gut punch. Perfectionism is fear disguised as excellence. You might sit there and think you just have incredibly high standards, right? You have such a clear vision of what success looks like that anything less feels like a complete failure. So what do? You wait. You wait for the perfect plan, the ideal conditions, the exact moment you feel entirely ready. But perfect never comes. Waiting for perfect is just your brain's cleverest excuse to never start. Because if you never start, you can never ever fail.
Let's hit on a really hard truth right here. You are dealing with the paralyzing fear of testing your dreams out in the real world. I mean, it is so much easier to stay in the fantasy of success if you keep planning and imagining without ever executing. You get to hold on to the comforting belief that you could succeed if you really tried. Because if you actually try and it doesn't work out, man, you have to face the terrifying possibility that maybe your ideas aren't flawless. But here's what you absolutely must understand. Failure is not the opposite of success. Inaction is the opposite of success. When you try and fail, you actually learn something invaluable. When you do absolutely nothing, you learn absolutely nothing. Literally every successful person you admire has failed way more times than you have even tried. The only difference is they kept moving forward.
So, the crucial point is, what do we do about it? Section 4, build systems, not motivation. We need to pivot from just diagnosing the psychology to talking about some no-nonsense solutions. And to do that, we have to completely dismantle this myth of motivation. You're probably thinking that successful people just wake up bursting with energy to do hard tasks. They absolutely don't. Motivation is just a feeling, and feelings are incredibly fleeting. They come and they go. You cannot build a life on motivation. What you need is discipline, which is not something you're born with. It's a muscle. It's built through small, consistent decisions over time. You are probably never going to feel like doing the hard work. You just have to do it anyway.
And the absolute easiest way to build that discipline is through environment design. Willpower is actually just a design problem. If your phone is sitting right next to you, you're going to check it, so put it in another room. Clean off your desk. Set a specific, sacred time for focused work. Close unnecessary tabs on your computer, and yes, I mean all 47 of them. Make it way harder to be distracted than it is to focus. By simply removing distractions, you're removing the need to make constant decisions, which saves all your precious mental energy for your actual goals. I also need to warn you about a very, very sneaky trap here, the content avoidance trap. Watching success videos, reading endless productivity articles, listening to motivation podcasts, it feels exactly like progress. But it's actually just your brain tricking you into another highly sophisticated form of avoidance. You are confusing learning with doing. You already know what you need to do. You really don't need more information.
Let's get into Section 5, taking imperfect action. To break this cycle, you have to do the exact opposite of what your brain is screaming at you to do. Start with the number 15. Do not try to change your entire life overnight. That is just your perfectionism talking again. Pick just one tiny thing. Work on your goal for exactly 15 minutes. Write just one paragraph. Make just one phone call. The size of the action doesn't matter. The repetition is what matters. You aren't aiming for greatness right now, you're just aiming to be consistent. Because consistency builds habits, and habits build lives.
Now, when you finally take action, here are the hard truths. Your first attempt is going to be terrible, and that is completely normal. Quality comes way later. Your brain is also going to fight you fiercely with every single excuse in the book. Discipline feels terrible at first, but as you force yourself to take action despite the resistance, you're literally rewiring your brain. You are teaching it that discomfort is not actually dangerous, and eventually, I promise, the resistance gets quieter. And finally, Section 6, Self-Compassion and Lasting Change. But what happens when you inevitably stumble? Because trust me, you will. Let's move over and see how this builds. Look at the reality of progress charted out here. You start with high effort, and then you hit a low point. You make a mistake, you skip a day, you fall right back into your old patterns. But that is not the end. Successful people don't let one bad day turn into a bad week. They don't let one mistake become an excuse to give up entirely. They simply acknowledge the setback and they get right back on track, just like we see in that third bar. Progress is never, ever a straight line. To get back on track, you absolutely must drop the guilt. Beating yourself up doesn't motivate you. In fact, guilt destroys your momentum. It fuels shame, and it just makes the problem worse. What you actually need here is self-compassion. You have to talk to yourself like you would a good friend. You messed up? Fine. Tomorrow is a brand new day. Forgiveness isn't about letting yourself off the hook. It gives you the vital permission to try again without the crushing, paralyzing weight of all your past failures dragging you down.
I want to reiterate this core reframing, and I really want you to internalize it. Lazy is what you have been doing. It is not who you are. You are someone with immense potential and massive dreams who simply got stuck in a biological avoidance pattern. But now you understand the psychology behind it, and because you understand it, you have the power to absolutely break it.
Which brings us to our final provocative question. Will you stop planning your life and actually start living it? Ambition without action is just fantasy. So I want to challenge you right now. As soon as this explainer ends, do not go watch another one. Close this out immediately and take your very first small, imperfect action right now. The version of you that you've always wanted to be is waiting on the exact other side of this struggle. Go be that person.